my God, what in the heck are you doing managing a Foot Locker store? Because if I had half that ability, I wouldn't be here doing this job.
Unlost Cause is a community that shares stories of individuals 40 and beyond who found the courage to reclaim their dreams and live without regrets. I'm David New, and I hope these stories help you find joy, purpose, and passion in a life true to you. Welcome to Unlost Cause, the podcast that celebrates stories of reinvention and turning dreams that once seemed lost into powerful realities. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce Craig Orlopp, whose journey with golf is nothing short of inspiring. His passion for golf started at the age of 12, and then he walked away from the game of golf at the age of 22, began a life in sales, only to return to his passion of golf at 43, more than 2 decades later. Now, Craig's story is one of the ones about rediscovering joy, purpose, and fulfillment in the game that he loves. Craig, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us to share how you turned what seemed like a lost cause into an unlost cause.
Well, thank you very much, David. I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, let's start from the beginning, right? You said that you had this ignition or this pilot light, this love for golf that started when you were 12. What initially drew you to the game?
You know, actually, I was invited by a friend to join his brother and sister to play a round of golf. And on the first hole, I swung 5 or 6 times. I couldn't hit the ball. And it infuriated me because I played baseball, I played football, I played basketball, and I couldn't get this silly little white ball. And it was sitting still. So actually, I started playing the game because I wanted to learn how to do this. And within 3 months, I was hooked.
Got it. And they talk about, a lot of people remember one of the shots that hooked them, right? Like they hit something out of the bunker or a good drive. Was there a particular shot that you remember that hooked you?
Not on that particular day, but it was shortly I really dove into the game. And it had to be within the first month when I happened to hit a shot from about 100 yards out and it went in the hole.
Whoa.
That was just like amazing. It was the third shot on a par 5, but it was still like, wow, I hit it exactly where I wanted to hit it.
So you got an eagle within 2-3 months of playing?
I did.
Okay. Growing up as a kid, were you pretty athletically gifted? Like you mentioned playing all these other sports. Did you play a variety of sports and pretty gifted?
You know, I'm not going to say that I was gifted. I would say, you know, when you're kids and you're picking teams, I was always the second or third guy picked. I love sports. I played a lot of sports. I just at the time didn't realize I was only going to grow up to be 5'5" and about 150 pounds. So I was a little small, but loved all sports.
Yeah, great. You mentioned you had like a family friend that got you involved, but did you have other family or friends that played with or encouraged this passion for golf?
You know, the very first 2 years that I played, my father would drop me off at 6 a.m. in the morning at the golf course to play. He would pick me up at 6 p.m. in the evening on his way home. So that was kind of my childhood, was being spent at the golf course. A lot of it initially was self-taught, and then my father got me a series of 6 lessons, and that kind of got me on my way. It wasn't until I was 14 when, you know, my parents made some sacrifices, joined a country club because I was really involved in the game. And I met 3 friends at that time that we were together, the 4 of us, for the next 8 or 9 years playing golf every day.
Wow. And did they had, you know, these friends that you were hanging out with, did they start earlier in life playing golf and you felt like you were catching up a little bit, or did they start roughly around the same time as you?
I'd say we all started about the same time. 2 of the 3 friends were 2 years younger than I was. So I always kind of grew up hitting the ball a little bit further than my competitors at the time. But no, I think we all started about the same time.
Got it. And as a teenager, you know, getting this love for golf, how was your personality at the very beginning and how did it evolve through golf? Were you naturally calm? Were you hard on yourself? Were you a perfectionist? Because, you know, they say golf is so mental because you're right, the ball isn't moving. You can't blame anyone else because we're the ones swinging the club. Like, tell me about the mental side, especially as a teenager, because, you know, our minds and bodies are changing a lot.
Sure. I have to initially say all of the above.
Yeah.
I had all those issues. You know, I love the game. I was fairly calm at it to a certain extent. always hard on myself, would beat myself up quite a bit, which was kind of the lessons it took a number of years to learn and to come
Mm-hmm.
back from. That was probably my biggest flaw in the game of golf. I used to joke and say, as a kid playing baseball, every now and then you hit a bad shot and the bat breaks,
Mm-hmm.
and there was times when you actually decide that golf club needs to break. And that took years to overcome, but I did.
Yeah. So then you start at 12, you're getting really into it, you're playing out with buddies, you're getting some lessons. When did you know that, hey, I might have this opportunity to play at the next level collegiately? Like, tell me about when that aha started coming to realization.
I would have to say at 15 years old, I started playing at 12. I actually broke my elbow, so then I almost had a year before I really started
Wow.
playing again at 13 and 14. So at the age of 15, I had signed up really and truly for my first really competitive golf tournament. It was the Mississippi Junior State Championship. And I figured that I would probably be in the first or second flight. I hadn't broken 80 yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to see a family friend, as you mentioned earlier, which was
Mm-hmm.
my uncle. And I spent a week with him down in New Orleans, and he really worked with me on my game. He was quite the avid golfer himself. And I went back to that tournament, and on the first day, I shot a 75, the first time I'd broken 80. And here I am at 15. I'm playing with 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, and it was a 5-way tie for the last spot in championship flight.
Wow.
And boy, was I nervous. I birdied the first hole to win. And as we were walking back up the fairway with my buddies that I grew up playing with, and they were all, egging me along, man, you did this. And I heard one of the 17-year-olds that I really admired at the time. I said, who did you win the playoff? He goes, no, some guy by the name of Orlop won, never heard of him. And that was like my first real success. And I was so thrilled and proud to do that in a tournament setting.
Wow. So not only did you break 80, you smashed it in a very intense competitive setting. Because usually they say, like, if it's your first tournament, expect to shoot 1 or 2 strokes worse just because of the nerves, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So then you surprise everyone. You basically, quote unquote, burst on the scene as a 15-year-old, right? So you still have probably a couple more years before you get your resume together to get recruited. So tell me about how that evolved as you're getting ready to play collegiate golf.
Well, I continued, of course, I played in high school. I played and we had a very good high school golf team. Matter of fact, 2 of the gentlemen that were on that team at the time have gone on to be professional golfers themselves. And they didn't do the career path that I did. They were good enough right out the gate to go on the mini tour. They became club pros in Mississippi. They're both still there. So I continued to play in a lot of tournaments. And at that time, our head pro at our club organized matches with junior golfers at other clubs.
Okay.
And my head pro and the gentleman who was the head pro at my high school golf course both went on to be president of the PGA Tour.
Wow.
Yeah. So
unbelievable.
It was, Ben Nelson and then Ken Lindsay. They were back to back. It's a 2 to 4 year period that someone becomes head of the PGA president. So they arranged a lot of tournaments. So it gave us opportunity to always be playing in competition. And when I graduated high school, I went on, I played 2 years at junior college. I'd set some lofty goals for myself that I didn't achieve. And that's kind of when I walked away from the game.
Yeah. So before we talk about that transition, tell me more about the JC and then playing collegiately, and how similar or different was it from playing as a high schooler?
Oh, the level of competition definitely picked up. I'm going to tell you a little short story. I was the 3rd best golfer on my high school team.
Wow.
These other 2 guys were really, really good. And I'm still learning and becoming a better player at the time. And when I finished high school, I went off and played 2 years at junior college. And the competition was elevated from what it was in high school. And a funny story, when I tried out for the golf team, I actually shot an 89.
What, this is the JC golf team?
This is a junior college golf team. There's a 1-day tryout. And I was so nervous, I was everywhere because I had one opportunity to make the team. It's a 1-day tryout.
Jeez.
And I basically went to the coach, who was an assistant football coach, and kind of had a scrapbook at the time of a lot of the accomplishments that I've done. And I said, "Sir, I can play this game. I don't know what happened today. Please give me another chance." And the funny thing is, they brought me on the first tournament as a alternate, and my score was not going to count. And I was a medalist. I had a great round.
Wow.
And so then he says, "Well, you're on the team." So I played 2 years of junior college, and I think I finished second or third as far as scoring average. I did not have the experience of playing on my senior level college. I went to University of Southern Mississippi, but didn't play on the golf team there.
Tell the audience about this kind of, I believe you had a seminal opportunity or turning point where you were going to compete in a golf tournament. Like, this is post-college, right? Or you're about to graduate, right? Like, tell the audience about what was going on and this decision that you came to, and then what happened after you made that commitment.
Like a lot of boys and girls, we dream of being a professional athlete or a doctor or whatever, but my dream was to be an athlete, to be a professional golfer. And it came a time that there was 2 tournaments that I wanted. I set a high, very lofty goal at the age of 22. The Mississippi State Amateur Golf Tournament was going to be played at my home course.
Great.
My golly, I'm going to win it. And as a kid growing up, I actually was allowed to play in the men's division starting at the age of 16 in our club championship.
Wow.
So there was 2 decisions. I'm in my early 20s. I still want to chase that dream of being a professional golfer.
Mm-hmm.
But, if I can't win on the local level, what's it going to be like on the national level? So I said, okay, here's your chance. You're going to win these 2 tournaments. It's silly to think back on it now, but I put all my hopes and dreams on these 2 tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the first one that came along was the Mississippi State Amateur. I had a good first round. I made the championship flight, which is about the top 15 golfers within the state. And when I made the turn on the second day, I shot a 31 on the front side.
Oh,
and my head pro, Ben Nelson, says, "Man, you have the lead. You have the lead." And I proceeded to the back, and those little voices that pop up in your head from time to time in the game of golf got in there, and I missed several short putts. And the next day, I just kind of melted down a little bit. And I finished in the top 10, but I didn't achieve my goal. But next up is our club championship.
Okay.
And we had a fellow by the name of Dick McMurray, who was a touring pro for many years and regained his amateur status. So we're talking back in the early 1970s. And Dick was a heck of a golfer. Nobody at our club beat him. I started playing in the competition at the age of 16. I was the 15th golfer. He was always the first. So every single year, he would beat me in the first round, and I'd go on to win consolation flight of championship flight. I'd beat everybody else. So it finally came down to the club championship. We played all our matches, and it came down to Dick and myself.
Let's go.
For the club championship. And he made comments years before that. I think he'll be the guy that takes me out, because Dick was the club champion for 10 years in a row.
What a run.
At our club. So anyway, we played down to the very last hole, and I lost it on the very last hole. And out of just utter disappointment of not achieving the goals that I set forth for myself, I stopped playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's some other questions that you'll probably ask me during this, but it was one of those decisions that I regretted for most of my life after that. I probably needed a little more coaching and help on the mental aspect of the game to give myself a chance. But, I kind of felt like I really didn't have what it was going to take to get to that next level. And it was time to start a work life.
Yeah. So I do have a lot of questions. So first one is, I really appreciate how you set these lofty goals, right? And I think for listeners, it's around, like, I'm a big believer, there's no victim mentality. We all have agency and we can control the goals that we set, and then our ability to hopefully take behavioral changes to increase the chances of us hitting them. So I really appreciate that. But then it also felt like it was so black and white, right? Like, because I also appreciate you're like, hey, if I can't beat the local, how am I going to beat the best in the world, right?
Yes.
So everything's resonating with me. But then the humanity is like, wow, as a 22-year-old, that seems like a lot of pressure, and a lot of black and white. So as you think back about, like, both sides, as I'm listening to it for the first time and I'm replaying that back to you, how do you feel about that?
Oh, it's haunted me for years,
Mm.
and there's been a lot of reflection on why I chose that type of really destructive personality to walk away from something that I did have somewhat of a talent for.
Yeah.
And doing this show with you really gave me an opportunity to go back and really think about some of the decisions that I made and things. And part of it is growing up in the South, and my parents were great people. They always saw the glass kind of as half empty.
Yeah.
And then I married this wonderful woman who sees the glass not as half full, but is overflowing.
Yeah.
If I could go back in time and have few more positive experiences, and I think I might have made some different choices at that time.
Yeah. And, I think you're right. So much comes back to our childhood and our role models and, what pathways our parents experience, because, they handle the same decisions, kind of like, and you hear about, like, kind of generational kind of, behavior. So I'm going to be really interested in, I think, when we fast forward a little bit to understand, like, now in the future, as you think back upon it. But so let's get back. So you decide that, okay, I set these goals, I didn't hit them, I lost on the 18th hole, so I'm going to hang it up, right? So how gut-wrenching was that? Or was it just like, okay, boom, it's binary, I didn't hit it, it's done? Did you have to take time to think through it?
I did just kind of walk away from the game. Golf is such a grind. I knew people in my age group that were pursuing that career. You don't go into the game of golf for money. You just don't. It's a grind to worry about where your next meal's coming from, how you're going to pay for the Motel 6, the travel, the expenses. It's not an easy road to choose.
Not at all.
Really walking away is probably the easier way to deal with it, because it is so challenging and so hard and so demanding. And I've known a lot of people that have tried, and it's a tough life. So I was at a point in time in my life where I actually wanted money.
Mm-hmm.
I needed a job.
Imagine that.
Start working. I'm 22 years old. This dream is not going to come true, and I need to get into the workforce. I have to eat. I have to live.
Yeah.
I didn't have the funds. I didn't have the backing. I didn't have a sponsor or anything like that, because I wasn't good enough to have that. So no, it was a little bit easier to walk away at the time. I say, okay, this dream is not going to come true, and I need to.
Okay, so at that point, put the dream on hold. So the pilot light was lit and it was going bright, and then you dimmed it. It may not have died, but it's dimmed. And so tell the audience then, what did you do into kind of normal life or have to make money life? Then what happened before you came back? Like, tell us about the career that you've embarked on.
I've done a lot of different things. I think I've changed careers several times. In school was a business manager. So I ended up going into sales initially. Was a small business owner out in Colorado. I learned a trade. Mm-hmm. That's a big change in careers. And that was about a 10-year window when I lived out in Colorado. I owned a flooring business up in Aspen, Colorado.
It's hard work.
Very hard work.
Backbreaking.
Put myself in a position where I ended up was the carpet installer for John Denver.
Wow.
I carpeted his house and several other Aspen, super famous people. So I did that for about 10 years. And in the meantime, for the first 4 or 5 years, I never touched a golf club. And then the conversation of golf would come up, and I would light up, and I'd say, hey, I used to play, and would get the clubs and go out and would have some good rounds. And after that is when I moved back to Louisiana. My father had had a massive stroke, so I went back there to help and got into sales, was married at the age of 30, 32 years old, and started to play golf occasionally. And it was about 10 years after I initially quit playing golf that I met Sharon. I met my wife, and I was trying to get her interested in golf. And so that was a lot of fun, starting to teach her. And she was kind of learning about my passion when it came to golf. And again, life has an interesting way of leading you down a lot of different paths. And when I met Sharon, I knew that she was going to be a pretty special individual, and that I would probably be supporting her career.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's when I went into retail sales, because I've had a long history of, even as a carpet installer, there's still a big sales job.
Oh, yeah.
Doing for yourself to get the interior decorator jobs and dealing with people.
So the years afterwards, you've been doing honest work, you've been do carpeting and flooring, and then got back into, it sounds like, more commercial sales when you had to go support the family and help out. And then you met your wife and then started doing retail sales. Now, during this time, it sounds like you're getting these invites or these opportunities to play a little bit of recreational golf, right? You're not going out and going to the range and banging balls, but it sounds like are you? Like, how involved is this kind of initial, like, a little bit more gas on the pilot light coming along?
Well, we'll step back just a little bit.
Sure.
So at 32, when Sharon and I first were married, during a move, I herniated a disc in my back.
Oh.
And I remember, after months of trying to rehab my back, and finally was on my hands and knees and couldn't walk any longer. And I went into the doctor, and he said, you have a herniated disc that has ruptured. It's up against the sciatic nerve.
Oh, no.
You have no choice. We have to go in and operate and take this out. And I looked at him, and my first question was, will I ever be able to play golf again?
Really? That was the first question?
That was my first question. And I mean, and tearful. And that was 10 years now that I really had kind of quit playing the game, except for a couple of times a year I would go out. So that was the first time that I said, gee, this kind of passion, this dream that I have may never happen again. But the doctor said, oh, sure, you'll be able to play golf again. So at that point, I moved in, moved on, got into retail sales, working for a Foot Locker. And Sharon and I were both part of the Foot Locker company for many years. So fast forward several years, I was working for a district manager up in Washington, D.C., and he said, hey, I'm organizing a golf outing for our district. All the managers are going to get together, and we're going to have this golf outing. So I'm in my mid to late 30s now. And if you're ever been in retail management, you're working 60, 70 hours a week. It's a grueling job. So anyway, he organizes one of these golf outings. So I get excited. I actually break out the golf clubs, and I practice go to the range whenever I could and practice a little bit. So we have this.
And this was after the surgery, right?
This is years after the surgery.
Years after. Okay. So you're feeling much better now. Yeah.
Yes and no. 6 or 7 years after the surgery. I had a relapse about 2 years after my surgery, and I was actually on the golf course and took a swing, and painful, went to the ground, and I suffered for the next 6 or 7 years on and off with problems with my back.
Okay.
We'll get into that later. But anyway, so he organizes this golf outing, and there's 30 of us Foot Locker managers. They go out there, and everybody's, beating the ball into the ground. Most of them aren't golfers. And I shoot close to par. I think I was one or two over. And everybody is like, dude, you can really play. So I'm in the golf cart with my district manager, and we're riding back to the clubhouse, and he goes, oh my God, I don't know, it was a 72, 73, 74, something like that.
It's remarkable.
He goes, and he says, my God, what in the heck are you doing managing a Foot Locker store. He goes, if I had half that ability, I wouldn't be here doing this job. What are you doing, man? So that was kind of the first time the light was relit, saying, gee, you know what? Over the past 10 years, whenever I go out and play with people, they compliment my swing. They compliment how far I can hit it, how close I put it to the flagstick. It was always the putting
Yeah.
that killed me. But that was the moment in time where I said, wow, he's kind of right.
Got it. So this is like a very seminal point then afterwards. So he kind of pats you on the back. He's like, hey, if I had half the talent, I'd be doing this. So then you go back after this a sales outing, blow off some steam. What happens when you get back? Do you still just kind of go back to the normal routine, or do you start thinking like, oh, there might be some local tournaments or?
I went right back to work. I loved working for Foot Locker. I really did. It was a great company to be with during that time period when Foot Locker was like number one in the United States. Everybody went there. And I was enjoying the job. I was enjoying what I was doing. I wasn't getting very far. I continued to be promoted to the next size store, larger store. But it gets to a point where I'm pushing 40 now and I'm wearing a referee shirt, putting sneakers on little kids' feet.
Yeah.
So there's a point in time where you start going, wow, am I getting a little too old to do this?
Got it. And at that time, when you're 40 and you're putting sneakers on little kids' feet, did you and your wife Sharon have kids at this time? And if so, was there any introduction of sports, and was golf in the equation?
Okay, that's a great question, David. Actually, we were married for 10 years before we had children.
Okay.
So I was 40 years old before our son was born. And what happens, Sharon was becoming more and more successful. I was still managing a store. And our son was a preemie. It was very small and required a lot of medical attention, needed a lot of care. And what was happening is I would be the one that would be called to, hey, we need to pick up Oren. He's not feeling well or whatever. My wife couldn't really have that flexibility to leave the workplace. And it was getting to the point that it wasn't fair to my employees. It wasn't fair to the company because as the manager, I'm not there to take care of some of the problems. So initially this came about as what could I do at this point of our life, going down yet another life path to become more flexible, that I would have the ability to take care of the kid, my child. And we had another one down the road. But this was the first thing of like, okay, what could we do? And so Sharon and I, one night, our son is now healthy. He's 3 years old, going on 4. And we're having a conversation about our work path and our lives and how much of a struggle this is becoming. And Sharon looked at me and said, there's 2 types of people in this world, people that work to live and people that live to work. She goes, I live to work. You work to live. What could you do? You have a passion for golf. So what would it take? Could you make a living in the field of golf? Is there anything that you could do? She goes, you've always supported me and helped me follow my dreams. Financially, we were in a position, that's the big thing, that we could make this change. So I thought for a minute, I says, I have the ability to teach. I've shown that all along. I know the game of golf. I think I want to chase that dream. She said, you've always been passionate about golf, follow your dream, chase your dream. And at that point, that's when I decided to make the leap.
Wow. What a wonderful kind of mutual decision made between you and your partner. But you mentioned that you always had this ability to teach golf, but it sounded like you took some time off. Were you like teaching other teenagers when you were a teenager, or how did you know you had this aptitude before diving into that?
Even in the workforce, whether it would being in the foreign business, teaching other people how to
got it.
To do this. Yes, giving lots. When I was a kid growing up, there was a lot of times members would come to me. Like when I was a kid, the four of the buddies that we played golf all the time, we learned each other's swings and we learned to help one another as opposed to taking lots of lessons. Okay. So there's a part of teaching involved in there. Same managing a Foot Locker store when you're teaching someone how to. So you feel like you've been teaching most of your life anyway. And I had enough knowledge about the game, the love for the game. I knew that I wasn't going to be a Dave Peltz or anything like that, but I knew I had the ability to at least get a job in the industry. And hopefully become a teacher.
I love me some Dave Peltz and all the data that he has. Okay, so now your wife does something wonderful and says in a very compassionate, empathetic way, but challenges you and says, "Hey, Craig, you work to live. So what about golf?" So she puts that in your mind. So how aggressively is that? Bam, you're like, I'm giving notice tomorrow? Or does that marinate for a while and then you give notice? Or tell the listeners what happens after that seed is planted and watered a little bit.
Almost immediately, I said, you know what? I do want to pursue this. I have a lot of regret that I just want to prove to myself that I did have the ability to become a professional. And yes, I could probably find something with the flexibility to fit our lifestyle at the time to help take care of the children. So the first thing that I did is, first of all, I made the decision that I was going to go ahead and make the change. So I started looking just to see if I could find something in the golf industry so that I could at least get into the business. And what better place? I initially saw an ad for Family Golf, which was a new company that was up and coming, that was buying up driving ranges across the United States. And they were looking for a salesperson to work in the pro shop of this very high volume driving range in Wayne, New Jersey. So I applied for that job. I mean, this is only a month after the initial conversation.
It's quick.
Moved along pretty quickly. And then I was hired almost immediately because of my extensive background in sales and working for Foot Locker. And I'm going to be working in the pro shop selling, shirts and shoes and equipment. So that was the first step, was getting a job in the golf industry. And from there, what better place to go to than to work on my game was to be at a driving range. So that was the best decision to go to work for Family Golf.
And then when you take this initial step and start working at Family Golf and have a lot of flexibility to take care of the family, what did maybe your friends and nuclear family, but relatives think about this career? Where they're like, Craig, I don't know, man, this seems a little bit out of left field. Or they're like, oh, you should have done this years ago.
What I'm going to talk about is I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. My wife sends out a Christmas letter most years and talks about what's going on in our lives, our successes, and what the kids are up to. And I would have loved to have heard my in-laws when they were reading that Christmas letter saying, oh, and Craig has quit his job and is trying to become a professional golfer at the age of 43. I would have loved to heard the comments passed around the table. I have to say, my biggest supporter was my wife, and she was always cheering me on and convinced that I could do this. And I, to be honest with you, I had a lot of faith in my ability that I was going to make it. As I mentioned, my father had a stroke when I moved back. He was always supportive of me playing golf. I had the opportunity to put him in a golf cart with me at one point in time and drive around and have him watch the golfer that I kind of became later in life, which was actually better than when I was a kid. To be honest with you. So that was pretty good. But I would have loved to have heard some of the comments made by my father-in-law and mother-in-law or siblings.
Yeah.
So, who tries to become a professional at 43? This is a time when most professionals are struggling just to keep their card and fighting injuries. And it's called the no man's land between between 40 and 50.
Yeah, before you go to what was it, the Masters or the where you're over 50 and you play?
The senior tour.
The senior tour, yeah.
What other profession gives you a second chance in life, right? The senior tour.
Exactly.
That's all about.
So you're sharpening your game at this family golf center, and then tell us how then the next few steps that happen after that.
The Wayne, New Jersey driving range was probably 20, 30 miles from where I lived. Very busy center. I still hadn't passed my player's ability test, so I'm not even in the program yet. I'm just working on trying to sharpen my game. Now, we're going to go back to when I said I had surgery at the age of 32. I re-injured the back again 2 years later. Well, I suffered for many years still with back issues, going down, being out of work, being on disability, rehabbing, going back to work. And this was a reoccurring problem that I just couldn't straighten out. When I quit my job and decided to do this, I was still having issues with my back, but I was bound and determined to fix that and continue this career. So the first year I spent at the Wayne, New Jersey location, and basically I was, again, running the pro shop, but I'd have the opportunity to take golf equipment. This is during a time when big berthers, the cow, all the big innovation in golf equipment was happening. So I would walk up and down the driving range line looking for someone who was using really old equipment. I'd step in there, I might give them a couple little pointers, and I'd say, hey, you really need to try this Callaway driver or the Tour Edge Bazooka, this big green-headed driver, and you get them hitting a few good shots, and you sell them a club, make a nice little commission on that. And then I found a location that was much closer to my house, another driving range that Family Golf purchased. And I moved to that location, which was a little bit slower, but it was closer to the kids to pick them up after daycare. I'd bring them to the driving range, and my son started hitting balls as soon as he was out of a bouncy seat. Basically.
Wow.
But again, when I went to the new location, I was working in the pro shop selling equipment. Still had the same opportunity to go out and give a few little pointers here and there and sell equipment. But at that point, it was about a year after I got into working in the golf industry is when I started applying to play for what they call the player's ability test. That's the first step in chasing that dream of becoming a professional. So the first 2 years in the industry was basically still in sales. And it wasn't until we moved to Colorado and I had a professional there that took an interest in me and gave me the opportunity to teach.
So it sounds like you had a mentor guiding you when you relocated to Colorado.
He was. It was a very nice gentleman by the name of John Tolan. He's still at it's no longer called Family Golf, but the facility that I worked at. And when Sharon and I moved to Colorado, again, it was another career move for her. And luckily, Family Golf had a facility in Colorado. So I was just going to transfer with the company to the facility in Colorado. Initially, I went, and this was a totally different experience because this pro shop offered golf equipment and hockey equipment.
Oh,
I knew nothing about hockey. But anyway, so again, I was put in the department of sales. And there was a moment when, again, John would be out on the driving range and see me selling equipment, helping people, getting them on the right swing path or whatever. And so one day he just asked me, he goes, hey, is this what you really want to do? You want to sell equipment all day, or do you want to teach? And I said, I want to teach. So he said he had a lesson in about 30 minutes, and he asked me to give the lesson. And about 10 minutes into the lesson, he goes, you can teach.
Oh, wow.
So fist pump
So he just threw you in the deep end. He didn't say anything about this lesson. He's like, okay, why don't you just teach it? I'm just going to basically audit and sit in the back and watch your style.
That's right.
Okay.
I had passed the player's ability test at that time. So I was in the program at that time, because I had passed it in New Jersey.
And how challenging, or tell the audience more about this player's ability test. Like, what are the elements? Is that just knowing how to teach, or do you actually have to be able to play and teach? Or tell us more about that.
Well, you can become a professional or be a PGA member. I mean, you can be in PGA sales. You can be working at one of the PGA superstores or selling golf equipment. There's a lot of different avenues to be a part of the PGA. Now, when I did this, the very first step was you have to pass the PGA player's ability test. The player's ability test, they arrange a round on a particular day at a certain golf course. It's a 1-day round. You play 36 holes in
36 in one day. Wow.
36 holes in one day. You carry your own equipment. You can't have a caddy. You can't have any help. And they take the course rating. And then currently you have to be within plus 15 of what the course rating is. So you're talking, shooting a 159 or a 157, which isn't, if you've played for a long time, that's not that difficult. That's a 79, 79, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Now, when I did it, my recollection compared to what it is today it's a 15. I think it was more around 10 or 12 when I
That's significantly harder.
The course record. So in even to apply, you're supposed to have between a 2 or a 3 handicap.
Wow.
To even apply to play in the PGA.
So it's pretty exclusive.
It is.
It's hard.
It is. And it is very hard. It is so grueling to get out there on one particular day. This is your day. Okay. 36 holes, one day, extremely competitive people out there. It is physically and mentally exhausting.
Yeah. And given your championship golf history, was it easy for you to qualify? Were you like, okay, I'm just going to take one at bat, maybe two, or like how many times did it take you? Or did you just ace it the first time?
Okay. Great question. So I'm only once I've decided that I'm going to get back into golf, within 1 year, I had decided to go ahead and start applying and playing in the player's ability test. The very first time I did it, I failed miserably. It's the nerves. It's the, the buildup going to this thing. It was like my tryout in junior college.
Yeah.
There's all these milestones in golf, breaking 100, breaking 90, breaking 80, breaking even par, learning how to play in a tournament. I mean, that's a huge thing, the nerves, all that stuff. So anyway, make a long story short, I didn't pass the first time. I did much better the second time. As they say, 3 times is a charm. And it's funny because you put so much pressure on yourself to play this one day, 2 rounds. The first thing I had to learn, I'm 43 years old when I first started this. I'm now at 44, 45. Playing against kids that are 22 and 24 years old.
Yeah.
I have to build my body up to try to walk 36 holes and be competitive. So the third round, I hit the ball very well, but started off double bogey, 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 double bogey.
Oh my gosh.
I'm 6 over after 4 holes. And I pretty much go, golly, I guess it'll be next time. And I just kind of relaxed. And then I went on a run of birdie, par, birdie, birdie, par. And I'm like, holy crud, I'm back in this. And I just stayed relaxed. And I think I shot like 75, 74.
Wow.
Made it fairly easily.
Easily.
So I had a lot of confidence that as long as I could correct the problems with my back and get in shape, that I could do this.
So, Craig, 75, 74 after a rough start. What were your emotions afterwards? Was it like relief? Was it excitement? Was it joy? Like, what was the prime dominant emotion or emotions?
A lot of relief. It was like the world just was lifted off your shoulders. For 2 years now, a year and a half, you've been focusing on this goal. That was the first thing, just the relief, the excitement and joy of jumping. I can remember jumping around on the green and the other 2 guys, and it was a threesome to speed play up a little bit. The other 2 guys were high-fiving me. Neither one of them, passed. Very, very emotional. And then the first thing that I could think about was getting to a payphone because we didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
Getting to a payphone and standing in the pouring rain, calling my wife and my son to let them know that I passed.
Yeah, yeah. How was that call?
Oh, emotional, very emotional.
I bet. I bet. I mean, after two times, and I think there's a recurring theme that Craig likes to set lofty goals, but dog on a bone, you're nothing. You're gonna run through walls.
I am. I am. I
Wow. Well, I get goosebumps hearing about that, and I can visualize you pouring rank back in the payphone days or a calling card, and telling Sharon and the fam that you passed.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I was doing that as well, as opposed to selling sneakers at a store, my son was 3 or 4 years old, and I wanted to be doing something that he was going to be proud of,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And he was so excited. He knew what Dad was trying to do. He was old enough to comprehend how much time I was putting in. But the great thing about when I did get the job, I was able to, Sharon and I made a deal that she could go full bore Monday through Friday, but I wanted evenings and I wanted the weekends so that I could pursue teaching golf and working in this industry. And that's the flexibility that I did get by changing careers, that it was game changing for us as a family.
No, absolutely. So then you pass, and what happens after you pass, right? Like you hang up a shingle and you're you immediately start being a teaching pro, or like because some people they pass, but then they have to like build out their client base and look for people. Like tell the listeners like what happens after you pass.
Now you're supposed to move forward with the you're basically considered an assistant. You're an assistant professional.
Assistant.
And
Okay.
right. And the PGA now has a very extensive training program. It's divided into 3 or 4 different parts, and you complete, phase 1, 2, and 3. You go to PGA school. They give you a lot of lessons. You have a lot of studying to do in each part there. And guys have to go through this to become an assistant at a club, or not an assistant, but a head professional. So it's about a 2 to 3 year program. They give you 5 or 6 years to complete the program before you
Mm-hmm.
kind of lose your status in
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
program. It's kind of changed from when I first got in compared to what it is now. Now
Yeah.
they let you join the program. You can get in immediately and start working in the industry, and you have a certain number of years to pass your PAT test. When you had to do that first before you move
Yeah.
forward.
Now that you know that you pass this really player's ability test, and now you have a lot of these options, and you want to teach. Now there are obviously so many pathways. There can be like just teaching kids recreational and using golf as an analogy for life. There could be teaching competitive junior golfers and really competing through them and honing his or her skills. There could be teaching seniors. There's resorts, where people come and just fine tune their game, or corporate. Was there like a genre that really drew you to like, oh, I want to do that? Or did you want to try a little bit of everything and figure out what resonated with you?
When I first passed the PAT test, I got a lot of attaboys and some high fives, and I went right back to working in the pro shop selling equipment. And it wasn't until I went to Colorado was given a chance to actually teach. So that opened up different windows. Now, initially, I was taking on adult clients. You're basically walking up and down the driving range, start a conversation with someone, maybe give them a few pointers, give them your business card that you're teaching lessons. So initially, I thought I wanted to help adults give adult golf lessons.
Yeah.
And what I soon discovered was the average businessman, if I could sell him a series of 6 lessons, it would take him months and months and months to come in to take those lessons. People that have been playing a golf for a really long time get pretty set in their ways, and basically they want a quick fix. They just
Mm-hmm,
want
mm-hmm.
that one little secret that's going to get them to hit it further and hit it straighter. As my son was growing up, I became interested in coaching baseball and started his baseball team coaching at a 7-year-old, 7 and 8-year-olds, won a couple of city championships, then started coaching the competitive baseball team for our Douglas County in Colorado. And I really enjoyed working with kids. So I was given an opportunity after I started teaching adults, I was given an opportunity to help with a junior golf program at our driving facility in Denver. And boy, I fell in love with teaching kids.
Wow.
And about 6 to 8 months into helping with the kids, the young man left for another facility, and I kind of took over the junior golf program. And that was very, very exciting, very rewarding. The kids are like sponges. You know, you have 2 kids that are learning to play golf. And that was it. I was like done teaching adults. Because the kids are so much easier. They learn it, they take it to heart and just move on. And mom and dad will just keep on, like they're there every week.
Yeah, I can even tell just by your body movement, like leaning in and getting energized about teaching kids. So tell me, like, what is the most rewarding and also most challenging part about, teaching youth or, these junior golfers?
Oh, gosh. They're there because they want to be there. They want to learn the game. They're very inquisitive. A lot of it is making sure that they're having fun. While you're teaching them something. They do catch on very quickly. Seeing the reward, my 2 greatest students are my children, because unfortunately, as a golf professional, I would see students. I might do 5, 6 lessons. There was some that I did more than that. I even started a little junior golf school, and they would come from a week to have them. But most of the time, it was a few lessons, and then you didn't see them anymore. So you really couldn't judge the impact that you had on their game. My 2 kids, I started, but with both of them when they were very little, and I put the love of the game into their hearts. And my son went on to be a very good golfer. My daughter ended up playing college golf. So to see their progress, they're my 2 best students.
Wow.
That brought me a lot of joy.
I bet. And then, Craig, you said that your folks growing up were a little bit half empty. Sharon's cup overfilleth. And then, so what was your approach? Did you go back to kind of the way that you were brought up, or did you take a different approach when you were teaching these junior golfers, especially your kids?
Yeah, that's, Sharon changed my life. Like I said, I kind of came from my dad would see the glass as half full. And if you work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, we can keep it half full. My mother saw it as basically empty, but there was a couple of drops left, and we're going to save that for the Depression, the era that she came in. But Sharon really, her family, the way of her thinking, really changed my life quite a bit. I became a little more positive, a little more upbeat in my thinking after hearing all of the stories that she has told. I'm sorry, I kind of lost track here.
Yeah, no. So you became much more upbeat, and then did that translate? Is that how you also taught your kids, like the mental part of golf, or what type of mentality or point of view did you try to impress on them?
Most of the kids, my number one thing is to play golf for fun. The one thing that I didn't learn to do as a junior golfer was really have fun playing the game. When I first started playing, it was a competition, and very quickly. I really never learned. I didn't start playing the game for fun. I lost that in the first 6 months, and then it was a challenge.
Really?
I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. I'm playing this. I'm playing in competition. So for my junior golfers, a lot of it was about having fun. We had a lot of group lessons, and we had them on the upper deck of the driving range, and we did the Happy Gilmores. We threw golf balls. We hit golf balls. If you get them into where they really enjoy the game, they love the game, they're just going to become better all the way around.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. And then as you think back, right, how has your relationship with golf changed, right? From a 12-year-old it sounded like you got so good so quickly that it wasn't fun anymore. It's like about improving, setting goals, achieving them. But now as you're older, you're able to recollect, like how has Craig's journey with golf and your relationship with golf changed?
Extremely appreciative to have the opportunity to chase that dream as I got older, because I was a little bit of a hothead. I was very hard on myself. But the lessons that I learned during the 20 or 30 years in the workforce gave me the opportunity to get back into this and to correct some of the flaws that I had, being kinder to myself, not talking negatively to myself. I actually even went to a sports psychologist for a little while to try to get rid of some of the negative thoughts that I had in my head. I had more patience with myself. I became a better golfer just from the life lessons
Yeah.
along the way, whether it was through work or Sharon's family. It was a positive impact on me. And I
Yeah.
think I was a better person and a better player at 40 than I was in my 20s.
Yeah, yeah. So then, now that you've been pursuing this dream and the pursuit of it, like, how do you see yourself differently, right? Like you just talked about your relationship with golf, but what about you, right? Are you still setting these lofty goals and going after it? Are you giving yourself more self-love and compassion, or like patience? Like, tell me more about the impact it has had on you since then.
Going after that dream and passing the PAD test had a
Hmm.
profound impact on my self-esteem, the way I viewed myself. All of a sudden, you realize, gee, I've reached this goal. I'm actually a professional golfer. It changes the way you interact on the golf course, because that behavior is not acceptable as
Mm.
someone who's representing the PGA.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so a lot of those, and you still see that pop up during major tournaments where a guy kind of loses it for a second and has that reaction, because we do expect perfection
yeah,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So I think the increase in confidence that I had in myself, gee, I have to tell you, after I became a professional, I felt like I even played better after that point. I can't go out there and shoot an 80,
Yeah.
right? So no, it instilled a lot more confidence in myself for
Oh,
sure.
that's great. And what about the impact this journey has had on like family, friends, or the community, right? Like you just said that, you had a lot more self-confidence. What about family, friends, or community? What has the impact been on them?
Oh gosh, I don't think it was all that much. I think my in-laws and my parents in particular, were very proud that I chased this dream, and that
Yes.
I did make it. As far as having an overall impact on my community or anything like that, I just hope that there's people that think back in their life that, hey, Craig helped me become a better person or a better golfer or something like that. Really haven't seen it, but you hope that you've made a difference in someone's life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how many junior golfers do you estimate you've taught or impacted? Thousands?
I would say a couple thousand.
Yeah,
Uh,
undoubtedly. I'm sure.
and to see, like I said, to see the progress that the kids made on this was probably more impactful than anything. Uh, I had a distinct opportunity to be around a couple of young junior golfers that has had some success. And the first one I mentioned was John Tolan. He was the director of the family golf. His son, at the age of 16, was the second youngest junior golfer to ever qualify for the U.S. Open.
Wow.
And his name was Derek Tolan, and he's gone on. I think he's the golf coach at the University of Colorado right now. Uh,
Unbelievable.
and we got the pleasure of the pros that were teaching at this facility. Whenever we would go to play around the golf, Derek would always tag along. And so I started watching Derek play when he was 13, 14 years old, and boy, did he turn into one great, great golfer. Um,
Unbelievable.
and then I had, um, as I mentioned, I used to coach baseball. And when I had my competitive baseball team, we were playing a neighboring town, and they had this kid playing shortstop. I sure liked him. I'd love to get him on my team. So I asked my son, I said, find out who this kid is. He can really play baseball. So my son comes to me and says, hey, the kid's name is Wyndham Clark. Ring a bell? So one day I'm teaching classes and I happened to see this young man come into the driving range, and I approached him and told him who I was and that I wanted to try to recruit him to be on my baseball team. And he proceeded to tell me that he's 10 years old and he was done with baseball and he was only going to pursue golf.
Whoa.
So we had a good conversation, and I tried to convince him to join my baseball team, but I also mentioned to him and his dad that I teach, golf here, and that I take my baseball team every week, every month we have a lesson, and that he's welcome to come to my junior golf camp during the summertime. So his dad was really nice, and they actually showed up one summer to my junior golf camp when he was 10 years old. I can't say I taught the kid a thing. It was a pleasure at 10 years old to recognize the talent that he had.
Yeah.
And he probably doesn't remember me at all, but he made a lasting impression. My son and I kept up with him through high school, watched him progress through. He went to Oklahoma State, and then he transferred to Oregon, and he won the U.S. Open.
Wow. And when you see so many golfers and being such an elite golfer yourself, how easy is it for you to put your finger like, wow, that kid is special, right? Like, and then what is it that makes you believe they're special? Is it their swing, how they deal with adversity, their mental game, or because there's so many factors when it comes to golf? Like what, yeah. So I'm just curious. Like you said, he had it.
He did, but he had it as an athlete. The kid had speed. He had hand-eye agility. He could play just about any sport. He was just an athlete. And if I'm not mistaken, both his mother and father were athletes. His father played tennis, and I forget what his mother did. And to step out on the golf course and see the intensity that this kid had at 10 years old, he told me, because all I want to focus on is golf. And this was at 10 years old. He had the focus. He had the swing that his father, I believe, had taught him. He could hit the ball further than most kids that were 12 and 13 at 10 years old. He just had it. And, sometimes you say things you learn to regret. I remember looking at him saying, oh, you need to come play on my baseball team. You don't want to just focus on golf. You need to do baseball, football, basketball. You don't want to burn yourself out, son. And look at him today, right?
God, well, maybe he would have 2 or 3 more open titles if he had cross-trained with you. All right. Well, so then for the listeners, like if there's someone who was in kind of a similar situation, who set their passions aside for some time, right? What's one step or one piece of advice you would give them about reclaiming that or leaning back into something that they loved in the past, or what might seem like a lost cause to them?
Man, don't have the fear. I thought about it for a while, the fear of failure, even though I did a lot of different things in my life, it always felt like work. It felt like work. But when I made the decision, made the leap, I felt like I never worked another day in my life. It was the best 10 years. And I only did this for 10 years. I transitioned. My kids were growing up. I turned from golf pro to stay-at-home dad to caregiver for my mom and dad before they passed away. But it was the greatest 10 years of my life. I woke up in the morning. I was ready to go. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play today.
Yeah.
I had so much joy, fulfillment, purpose. It's a gift that my wife gave me that I feel grateful for the rest of my life, to have that opportunity to at least try to prove to myself that I probably did have what it took. I was never an elite golfer. I was a good golfer. I didn't have what it takes to get to that next level. But hey, I really enjoy teaching golf. And still to this day, at 70 years old, I still get calls from people in my neighborhood, members that I know, and say, "Hey, I'm having a little trouble. Can you come help me?" And I just try to keep it fun,
Yeah.
and keep it real.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And, since we're a community in this together, what ask would you like to make of our audience?
Go for your dream. I don't know anything else to say. What I did is not rocket science. I don't think it's going to save a community or help a community anyway. Do something for yourself.
Yeah. Beautiful.
What to quite say on that.
Yeah. And Craig, your story is incredibly inspiring. How can our audience support or connect with you moving forward?
That's a tough one because I am old school. I have no social footprint or media footprint known to mankind. So you can always email me, but that's about as far as my technology goes. I have
Got
no
it.
podcast, no Facebook page or anything like that. So,
Well, they can certainly comment in the comments below, and then I'm sure you'll see it, or I'll pass it along to you.
be happy to reply. Sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Craig, for sharing your amazing journey. You've shown us that it's never too late to reclaim a passion and turn a lost cause into an unlost cause. And we're excited to see how your renewed love for golf continues to shape your life and inspires all the others who end up in contact with you as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Before you go, if you're inspired and want to be a part of something bigger, subscribe, like, and share to help more people reclaim their dreams and live true to themselves. Also, let me know if you or someone you know would be an inspiring guest on this show. Together, let's spark courage to live without regrets, the Unlost Cause way, one story and one person at a time.